Whitney Roth, Zen and the Art of Laughing Last.
Headed out tonight, we're getting towards the end of the tattoo. This tattoo has been quite an epic. I don't think we've really discussed what went into this here. This is a classic Japanese, I call it tuxedo. I think also it's three-quarter bodysuit, all right? Hiroyoshi III, coming out of Yokohama, did the whole layout here, and then his disciple is in Hollywood. That's just purely coincidental, all right? I'm lucky that way. Horisuzu is out there. You say the word Hori because it's like doctor. You say Dr. Jones, Dr. Williams. Hori means engraving or tattooing, that kind of a thing. So these are familiar names. You know right away what he does for a living, and this goes all the way back to the 1600s, even earlier, all right? It's a definition, like saying Dr. so-and-so. And Horiyoshi, Yoshi is like Joseph. Yoshitoshi is Joseph, kind of a thing. And Horisuzu his real name is Taku. And Taku is from Chiba, which is right in next door to where the master, we call him teacher, sensei, the boss, okay? The boss is about 10 years older than I am. And Horisuzu is, I think he's in his 40s, all right? And he's right at the peak of his shit, okay? And he's routinely in touch with the boss in Japan. In fact, he's going to get his work for about 3 weeks. He goes every year, and he's, the full-on kind of a thing. I've got, 250 hours in on this. Yeah, and the kind of, we finish up with the shading, that goes into the waves and the clouds and whatnot. And it's a kind of an ink that doesn't come out of a bottle. It's the same kind of ink that we use when we do calligraphy, and the same kind of ink that we use when we do sumie, when we do the painting on white paper with the black and the horsehair brushes or whatever. It's the exact same kind. The kind that we use is Kobeien, all right? Another popular type is 5-star, which is Itsu Suboshi. It means 5-star. And you can buy it in the art stores. I don't think you can buy it in familiar art stores here in the United States, but you can find it routinely in painting and art stores in Japan and around Asia. And it comes in a stick, and you grind it in a dish. The kind of dish that you use makes a big difference in the way the ink pans out, okay? The way the gradation in the dish, whether it's vertical, diagonal, whether there's cross-hatching, and a lot of this is almost microscopic, is when you run the ink bar across it, it's going to create a more coarse kind of an ink or a real thinner kind of a substance to it, a consistency, and the way that you roll it around. If you do it circular, then that's going to create a different kind of consistency. If you do vertical, up and back, etc. A lot of fellas judge it by the sound. And it's a way of settling your system when you first show up in order to get your mind set to do something that's permanent. Because when you go and you do calligraphy, you got one chance. And calligraphy is the one chance setup. If you can get past that, when you go to do tattoos on people, you got one chance. Okay? And the commitment to that is, first, there's a method to it. You don't just show up and go, okay, I'll take the challenge. This isn't bungee jumping. you can kind of steer the bet a little bit here. And the first thing you do is settle your system down, get your heart rate down, get your respiration down, get yourself settled, and you can hear it in my tone. Snipers do the same thing. Whenever you talk to a professional shooter, they never raise their voice past this. They never let their heart rates pick up. They're always a shooter. And when you talk to calligraphy professionals or a sensei who teaches this, they never speak above this level ever, because it's 100%. Same way as somebody in the FBI is 100% FBI all the time. He doesn't drink, he probably doesn't smoke unless he's doing undercover, and his voice stays right around here. You following me so far? Okay. The ink has to be mixed in a certain way. You scrape, okay? And it's back and forth. The ink that I brought the bar of ink with me that we used in Japan so that we could continue to use that same bar of ink and get the consistency, all right? It's made in Nara, and Nara is in the north of Japan. It's up, I believe, near Osaka. I may be completely mistaken here, but it's in the north, and they make this in the ancient way. Everybody in there is covered with black dust, and it's made from pine briquettes, okay? When you take a pine bough and cook it down into charcoal, it's made, then that charcoal is crushed and it's mixed with vegetable glues, etc., to bind it together, but it's 100% organic, and it's the same pH balance as the human body. And when you put that ink in, particularly at the end of the long stick, you've seen the machine, and all the colors that I have were done tebori, which is hand poke, okay, handwork, and that's done at the end of, some people actually use like a chopstick, okay, think of permanent chopsticks, and then you will attach the needles to the end of that, and that packs a lot more ink into it. It's just about unbearable. But what happens is the ink then kind of starts to move, and over a period of time, it becomes more mellow looking. It takes on a whole tone of its own, the way a Stradivarius ages, and the violin or even a guitar ages, the wood kind of gels, the glues change and whatever, and you get a warmer sound or you get a louder, softer tone. And the same thing happens with the colors, all right? It's an endless process to get the ink, and that's just the start, because then from there you're going to do 5 gradations. I spent a year going to class twice a week in Tokyo. We're just working on those 5 shades of gray. Not 50, 5 shades of gray, all right? And that's what we use when we do the clouds and the waves and so forth in the tattoo that we have here. And you can pretty much judge the quality of a really fine tattoo artist by the gradation of their gray shading. There's a lot of great gray shaders in the lowrider community, for example. Japanese, of course, and you'll see gradation shading in other colors, but pretty much it's the black and gray, because it's an infinite variety of shades that you can do. And if your eye is able to detect it, then you can make it look like satin. You can make it look platinum. You can make it look silver. You can make it look like silk. Just as a cigar selector, one of those old gals sitting in a factory down in Cuba right now can choose, and she can see in between 15 different shades of the color of the cigar. And she separates every cigar according to those 15 shades, so that every box of Cuban cigars that you get is every cigar is the exact same shade. And there's codified 15 shades. And she's known that, she studied that, and she was roughly 12 years old when she started work in that factory. Same thing for the old tattoo fellas. Once you've been doing it for about 20 years or longer, then you'll be able to detect the variations in the shading. And it's no longer, just dip it in water, go to black, dip it in water, go to black. You'll line out 5 different little tubs of variations in the black ink and work it there. And it takes 5 times as long to do it. But this becomes the museum quality stuff that people reach for when we talk about the Japanese tattoo. Beyond that, my best recommendation is get a mouthpiece. just like you use in football? Because a lot of you, as soon as I tell you how many hours I got on the odometer here, the first thing you think is, oh my God, how painful is that? And my true answer is just short of unbearable. And part of the way you got through it, I lost an inlay in my molar. I met probably one of 4 female dentists in Tokyo. I don't think there's more than 4. And Dr. Okamoto, she took care of my molar when I from gritting my teeth, the gold inlay or whatever you call it fell out. I spit it out into my hand. I said, this hurts too much. And I went to the sports store, the Don Quixote, and I bought a handful of football mouthpieces and a tube of tennis balls. And then you can gradate how painful the session's going to be. If it's going to be just on my shoulder, that's just the mouthpiece. If we're doing ribs, that's 2 balls and the mouthpiece. It takes a lot of balls to get through this, huh? Tennis balls. Tennis.
ただいまデイビッド・リー・ロースとつながっています。小さな火のかかしはいかがデイビッド・リー・ロースへようこそ。勝利の笑いの禅と芸術。
Japanese tattoos, and a lot of folks are, curious about where it actually comes from and what the history of it is. And, there's a lot of mystery to it, but it's not so much specifically mystery. If you go all the way back into King Arthur time, okay, when people were actually carrying swords around and so forth, this is why when folks are walking on the sidewalk in Tokyo, you always walk to the left, because if you carry a sword, it's always on the left-hand side. You're not allowed to bump into somebody's sword. Things are a lot safer if everybody carrying a sword was on the left-hand side of the sidewalk, okay? You moving past them, move up the middle on the right, okay? If you go to Osaka, which was a trade city historically, had foreigners from all over the world. They weren't carrying swords and stuff in the street. You had a lot of people who spoke multiple languages. You would have those kinds of clashes or whatnot. And they walk on the right-hand side of the sidewalk to this day. Okay, I'm going to kind of set the scene here for you. If you like the scenery of history, it's not The Magnificent Seven. In fact, The Magnificent Seven is the cowboy movie that was based on Seven Samurai. Get the movie Seven Samurai. It's from the 1950s, and it will depict to you what Japan was like in the 1600s. Another great movie came out about 4 years ago is Zatoichi, the Blind Swordsman. Okay, Takeshi Kitaro Beat Takeshi, he was called at the time, plays a great role of the blind swordsman who wanders the countryside. And if you want a depiction of how desperate the times were for those of us who actually work for a living, it was pretty rough. And that includes show people as well. We were mostly wanderers, before there were microphones and studios and cameras and selfies and whatnot. You sang and danced for dinner, literally, unless you made it into one of the key city centers. Asakusa, which is kind of yeah to yes, Asakusa is the way you'll read it in English in print, but you pronounce it Asakusa, is still there, and that is the equivalent of downtown. Two groups of folks, Bakuto and Tekya. These were people who, the gamblers, the shop owners, the bartenders, the bouncers, the firemen. Okay, you had your own fire teams. The cities were built out of wood and paper, literally, okay. What kind of guys would put out fires in those days? What kind of guys would build buildings in those days or work farming in those days? Tough guys, you follow. And they kind of overlapped. The same people who were working construction for you were also the fire teams in case there was a fire that night. Those guys also created the first ambulances and the first quick hospital care, triage units, etc. And those guys were also your police force, not the samurai. Those were your SWAT teams, okay? Those, think of it like that. But in terms of the general constabulary to keep the peace now, like that, in a not so functional way. Okay, well, all the same guys, and those fellas would spend a lot of time sitting around. Those jobs, just like professional show folks like myself, were professional waiters. We wait for the next bus. We wait for the fight to stop. We wait for the sound system to get fixed. We wait for let's just dovetail a few. We wait for the next fire. We wait for the next riot. We wait for the next construction job. We wait for the next war. And it's on and on. So what are we going to do while we're waiting? I don't know, let's draw pictures. And it's an easy leap from drawing pictures on paper or in the mud or, carving something into the side of a tree to, hey, can you put my girlfriend's name right here? And you take your left hand and you reach across and slap your right shoulder. And that's about as simple a beginning as it was. In those days, working man, blue collar, tekya, bakuto, the farmers especially, were not allowed to have any expensive possessions at all. They weren't allowed to have any real artwork or any paintings or anything. That was all reserved for royalty. So a polite and very, very honorable way of saying, oh, fuck you very much. Bakayaro. This is, I have a Picasso here that has been engraved into my skin, and if you would like me to remove it, boy, do we have a problem here. Now, I'm translating, not literally. But if you put as much time and care into the painting, what's the difference? If you have a Picasso who will spend so many hours slaving over a hot and steaming canvas in order to create Guernica, what's the difference between his discipline and his adherence to the art form than the fellow who did my tattoo? He's been working every single day since 1973 started, and he's known around the world. I have over 200 hours in this one tattoo, and he's done thousands. It's up to you to judge the quality of the actual work itself, but in attempt and tempo, it's identically the same. Mine's permanent, or it's at least as permanent as I am. And if you've denied me the right to put anything on my walls or anything on in terms of my clothing, it can only be drab. Well, I think we may have solved things, including when I go swimming naked. The fellows who built the theaters for Kabuki and NOH theater again, these are the same fellas who were the fire teams, who were the security guys. And yeah, sometimes I work security. Here's my card. It really is that, okay? And they are professional waiters. They can only really work in daylight because there's no electricity, all right? The shows go on at night, and the shows in Kabuki theater is just like rock and roll or vaudeville or Broadway. Where everybody who just did the show and saw the show, where's everybody going right after the show? Right next door. Yeah, you're going to go have a drink, or you're going to go have a noodle, or the place right after that which serves noodles and drinks. And we're going to the place which has noodles, drinks, and comedy. Comedy was big, starting back in the 1500s, you follow. Spoken word comedy, acted out comedy, late night comedy, okay. The fancy version of theater is called No Theater, N-O-H. And those are the masks. The masks are unmoving, but by animating and moving the mask around, it's very dignified and very dry. And it's like watching the sprinklers. You kind of know the storylines and whatever. The answer to that was Kabuki. Kabuki is James Bond. Kabuki is the Three Stooges. Kabuki is the Beatles. Kabuki is porno. Kabuki is all of that mixed in together. And it's popular theater, all right? Big, bright, fancy colors and lots of drama and betrayal and deception and sex and a lot of hilarious humor, really smart humor, really stupid Three Stooge humor, and all of it in individual plays and productions. It's designed for folks like me. The great unwashed, and I'm card carrying. If you wear bib overalls to work or anything like it in feudal era Japan, then you were sitting next to me, and we were eating squid on a stick and drinking room temperature sake out of a stoneware glass and laughing hysterically at the latest detective series episode, okay, in a kabuki theater, all right? I saw a kabuki show. I'll think of the name in a second here. In Japanese. In English, it was called Tweezers. And it was a story about a detective samurai, a kabuki, in the National Kabuki Theater, who is a James Bond type character. He's very suave. He has a lot of secret weapons that he can pull out of his shoe and out of his belt and this kind of thing. But he's also a Sherlock Holmes. He's a brain. And there has been some very unusual occurrences, and things have been stolen from the National Palace. And he wakes up to see some tweezers floating around his bed one night and realizes burglars are using magnets to steal the royal jewels through the ceiling. And there's a lot of hilarity. And, he tries to seduce the princess because he's got some flaws too. Yeah, and there's violence and a great sword fight and a chase scene at the end. And, in drama, a lot of people are killed, but we all learn a lesson. In tragedy, everyone's killed, no one learns anything. Most of these are dramas mixed with comedies, just like, my life, a drama romance adventure documentary. And the music was very, very lively compared to No Theater. No Theory is like opera. It's very... And Kabuki is lots of cymbals and drums and Santana and explosions and, and scenery pulling apart and revealing and Cirque du Soleil kind of, and silk drops from the ceiling and then it pulls away to reveal like somebody comes out of the floor and lots of trapdoors and this kind of a thing. They took it even further to what's called Taishu Engeki, which means people's theater, okay? And in the 80s, we saw elements of this where you would have a feudal era family, with the top knots, okay? And the gowns, and everybody's on their knees, say as a position, tatami mats, sliding sliding shoji screens only. It's the 1600s and a phone will ring. And somebody slides open a shoji cupboard and there's a telephone and she answers the telephone. And that compels the plot forward. So, but in People's Theater, that's kind of cool. It's like I painted a pair of sunglasses on the Michelangelo, and that's my t-shirt. Oh, I get it. I have a picture of Albert Einstein, and I painted a mustache on him, and, okay, you've used a sense of humor, and you actually have accessed and used the past as well. All of this is in one general area in Asakusa, in Tokyo. However, Asakusa was right next to an even bigger part of the city. It was called the Floating World. The Floating World, Yoshiwara.
You are tuned directly to David Lee Roth. How about Little Fire Scarecrow?
Move aside and let the man go through. Let the man go through. Move aside and let the man go through. Let the man go through. Move aside and let the man go through. Let the man go through. Move aside and let the man go through. Let the man go through. If I stole somebody else's wave to fly up, and if I rose up with the avenue behind me, some kind of verb, some kind of moving thing, something unseen, some hand is motioning to rise, to rise, to rise. Fat facts you must cut clean. You gotta take the elevator to the mezzanine shop. Change in the sun, super bon bon, super bon bon, super bon bon. Two fat facts you must cut clean. You gotta take the elevator to the mezzanine shop. Change in the sun, super bon bon, super bon bon, super bon bon.
Floating World, Yoshiwara. And the Yoshiwara was as big as I've read it to be, is described as about 40 football fields. Think of what 40 football fields would look like. It's an entire city. All of it, whatever happens in the Yoshiwara, stays in the Yoshiwara. Okay, I don't have to say anything else. I will, but I will. I'll paint in the lines here, but you want me to, but I don't have to. It's Vegas. It's completely Vegas. Virtually everything that is in Las Vegas today was in the Yoshiwara. And this took place during the times of King Arthur and the knights in shining armor. That's the 1600s feudal era, up through the 1700s during the times of Napoleon and Les Miserables and the French Revolution. The Yoshiwara was in a stockade. It had huge 25-foot walls all the way around it. And it was like Las Vegas, but with a wall. And we made them pay for it. Sorry, it's a political joke. And it had a gate. And you would go to the Yoshiwara the same way as you would say, where are you going after this, Dave? I go, I'm going to Hollywood. I don't really have to finish that thought, based on who I am and, what that would entail. Dave likes to gamble and he likes that sake a little bit. Dave never gambles. He likes the girls. No. Dave likes, and on, but it's all there. And people were born and raised and died in the Yoshiwara, okay? And many of your famous Japanese woodblock artists, okay? Just the identical to the, think of the the artists in Europe who spent their time in the brothels painting, you know, and who was our small friend, our short friend, who with the beard, who painted all the girls from Can and everything in Paris, and I'll think of the name there as well, but artists hanging around in the darker corners, the demi-monde, is not at all unusual, whether it's Henry Miller, the writer, or Picasso in his after hours, or any of our ballet stars, the Nijinskis, and so forth, you know. Jazz musicians, this is a long history, rock and rollers, etc. The sunlight bores the daylights out of me, said Mick Jagger, and an entire generation nodded in agreement. Everybody went to the Yoshiwara. It was, you know, frequented by those who had some coins in their pocket. So if you just put out a big fire, you had some coins in your pocket. If you were a fisherman, then your payday catch came in. You went to the Yoshiwara, to the houses and establishments that catered to you and your class. Samurai routinely went to the Yoshiwara and had a great time, fell in love with their courtesans, with their gal. You know, there's a lot of drama. There are many kabuki plays about the samurai who falls in love with his gal in the brothel. You follow the oiran, they're called, and he has to hide it from his family, and there are a lot of ambushes, a lot of politics, because everybody went to the Yoshiwara sooner or later. It was a great scene for ambushing, and the opposite side of diplomacy. If you're carrying a sword, that's diplomacy. And a lot of the future politics were decided in the Yoshiwara. Everybody who worked in the Yoshiwara had the day off, and that's when the tattoos would happen, okay? So if you're a sword maker, or you are a builder, or whatever, you have huge amounts of time off. And if you're a fireman, quote, policeman, quote, security guy, half of your time is off. And that's where the tattoos began to get started. What's the first thing that you're going to start inking on yourself if you're completely surrounded by everything I just described? You're in the theater district. Everywhere you look are movies, movie posters, souvenir stores, and it's all James Bond and Spider-Man and Captain Marvel, and do you follow what I'm saying? And you think of all of our superheroes today and the monsters that they battle. I don't care if it's a kraken or something from Jupiter, or it could be a dinosaur. Oh, I like the dinosaurs, man, because they look a little bit like frogs and stuff like that, and it's a little more believable and so forth. And we see these tattoos all the time today. Looking, you know, in a lot of specific age groups, it's nothing but what I just described. So what folks started tattooing on were actually the posters for the theater plays that I just described, okay? And you have great names like Kuniyoshi, Utamaro, Yoshitoshi, Toyokuni, just for starters, okay? They all threw away every penny they had in the Yoshiwara. They all fell in love a million times in the Yoshiwara. They were artists. They didn't have enough money to do anything else. Where else are you going to find great-looking dames who are going to pay any attention to you? The painter's pencil can make you gorgeous? Ooh, you're going to be popular. Oh, yeah. And the fierce warrior looks even more fierce and warrior-like in your paintings? Ooh, you popular and drinking for free now. Yeah. That's not actually a Japanese accent, but it's a Japanese sentiment, you follow. And they all spent their time just as, hey, you make your money, you go into New York or Hollywood, here we come. And that's in music, that's in theater, drama, dance, you name it. Even more so. When the money's limited, then you really want to be around the community and where the audience also is. So these artists were the ones who were commissioned to do all the poster work and all of the advertising, which is lithographs, kind of, you know, block print painting, okay? And when you see, for example, the fellas with the swords, you know, those are characters from plays. When you see the what we would call geisha looking into the mirror, and there's a dragon or a fox behind her, or a giant fish, and he's riding, these are all stories from kabuki plays. So essentially, it's the direct equivalent of me having Sean Connery with 3 babes. Yeah, there's a martini and shaken, not stirred in one hand, and a Walther PPK with a silencer in the other hand, right? And there you go. It is symbolic directly of that. One of the most popular plays was the 100 Heroes of the Marsh, okay, Warriors of the Marsh, the Suikoden. And this is Robin Hood, virtually. You have 108 betrayed people by evil warlords, bad co-workers, you know, malicious captains, you know, deception, and they are all forced to live in the swamp together. They live in the marsh together, and each one has a name, and each one has a skill. There's the one with Kumon who has 9 dragons tattooed onto him. There is the bald monk who likes to drink, and he has the 6-foot staff. There is the one who has only cherry blossoms on his left shoulder. There's the one, Bente Kozan, who has the ability to dress as a woman and deceive. And. Also, the stories that accompany all of this are really, really wonderfully grotesque, just like Huckleberry Finn, which in the very first pages of Huck Finn, it talks about if you betray the location of the pirate's cave, we'll cut your guts open and send them to your grandma. And, you know, it's 12-year-olds trying to be as grotesque as possible and being pretty successful at it, you know, like this. Same thing with these stories, all right? Anytime you see one of the 108 heroes with a lantern leading the way, and I've seen these tattoos, in fact, I'll put some pictures up on the website of one of the warriors. He has a red sash. It's red because it's been dipped in the blood of the dead enemy. And he's squeezed the fat out of the victim's brain and used it to put in his lantern and light his way to the future. You learn this shit when you're 10 years old in Japan, okay? How cool, how gross, how sickeningly horrifying, you know? Even if you learned it as a kid, by the time you turn into an adult, you're increasingly horrified, and that's increasingly wonderful to any 12-year-old. So the legends continue forever. There is the one hero, I don't know if it's Narukami, I don't think it's him, but who demonstrates his loyalty to his team in a combat SEAL team Delta Force way. He saves the lives of his team by walking into a huge tub of boiling water calmly. Whoa. Okay. Well, this is a version of Robin Hood, and those are the characters that are in all of these tattoos. And now you'll start to look for him. The warrior monk, he's bald, he has beads around his neck, and he always has a 6-foot staff. Watch for the character that has covered with 9 dragons. The picture of the character, that character has 9 dragons drawn inside, a tattoo within inside of a tattoo. There is the one where he's holding a gate. It looks like a monster's head, and water is spilling around him. He sacrificed his life. He held the gate open and flooded the village of bad guys. Every one of these has a story, but what we're wearing are adventure posters from kabuki shows. You follow? There's no magic, no mystery to this, all right? And this comes from people going to the shows just the same way that we do today. When I first went and I saw James Bond and Goldfinger, I came out and I said, someday I'll get a Walther PPK pistol. I'm not even sure what that is, but I'm sure I'll own one. And someday I'll smoke Rothman's King Size, the blue ones, like James. I'm going to try a martini. And I had a whole list of things, you follow, and it would have made perfect sense. I'm sure there are plenty of people with, you know, that character drawn on, just as people have, I'm sure there are people who have, whoever your hero is. It can be Coltrane and it can be Scarface. I've seen both of those tattoos, all right? And both of those come from advertisements. Usually the tattoo that you see from Coltrane is from the album cover, Blue Train, okay? And Tony from Scarface never actually existed. He's no more real than Quick Draw McGraw, but it's nevertheless qualifies as a hero to a huge number of people in many different senses, and it just made perfect sense that they would take that black and white poster from Scarface and put that on the back of their calf in Dayglow colors. So it's not even a cousin, it's the same thing. And when you describe where the original Japanese work came from, it came from a very believable, very real, it's not a religious background. It's the same thing that we're doing today.